Manjuji. Mr. Deepak Chopra, founder Chopra Foundation. Ritu Badera, Manjukarra Prakash, past presidents, governing body members, flow members, by-flow members, our distinguished staffs and invitees and friends from the media. A very good afternoon. Warm wishes for Navratra, and also let's celebrate the success of Mangalyal here together at Flow. Today, I am honoured and privileged to welcome Mr. Deepak Chopra, founder of Chopra Foundation, amongst us, and her better half, Miss Deepak Rita Chopra. We welcome you all warmly to Flow. Deepak Chopra definitely needs no introduction. You all know him as a New York Times best-selling author with over 75 books to date. He is the founder of Chopra Center for Wellbeing in Carlsbad, California, as also the Chopra Foundation. He is a columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle and Washington Post on faith and contributes regularly to Ofra.com, Intent.com and Huffington Post. A global force in the field of human empowerment. Deepak Chopra's popularity as an international presenter and keynote speaker is truly extraordinary. Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, had rightly referred to Mr. Chopra as one of the most lucid and inspired philosophers of our time. Time magazine has described Dr. Chopra as one of the top 100 heroes and icons of the century and credits him as the poet-prophet of alternative medicine. As a global leader and pioneer in the field of mind-body medicine, Mr. Chopra will speak on the future of well-being and enlighten us on his exciting new approach to holistic health that focuses on the yearnings we experience physically, mentally and spiritually. True to the objectives of Flow, to educate and empower, this session is organized primarily with the aim of educating our members with a roadmap created by Mr. Chopra for higher health based on the latest findings in both mainstream and alternative medicine. This session would also empower us with practical ways to experience higher consciousness, transformation and healing, leading to understanding of consciousness and enhancing total well-being, physical, emotional, spiritual, social, community, financial and ecological. As Mr. Chopra states, there are no extra pieces in the universe. Everyone is here because he or she has a place to fill, and every piece must fit itself into the big jigsaw puzzle. My dear friend, Flow has brought together this opportunity to learn the ways to achieve holistic well-being in a more structured and logical way from the Guru himself. We have also invited the spouses, as well-being for self cannot be complete without the well-being of the family and our dear ones. So a very warm welcome to Mr. and Mrs. Chopra and to the better halves of all the Flow members present here. Before we hand over the mics to Mr. Chopra, a few housekeeping points. Please keep your mobiles on silent or switched off. Another, you may also like to reach out to the 3,500 members of Flow by advertising in the Flow newsletter, which is shortly to come. You may be in touch with the Flow office for the same. It's also my pleasure to invite you to another very interesting session on 8th October, the Rainbow Life at FICCI. It would be covering the 7 aspects of the Rainbow Life: physical health, positive thinking, emotional intelligence, spiritual growth, family life, value of friendship and professional excellence. Here I would like to take the opportunity to thank Ritu Badera, governing body member, of Flow and Director Vadera Art Gallery for coordinating today's program as beautifully as always, and also very graciously hosting today's high tea. Thank you so much, Ritu. Here I would also like to welcome Mr. Bridjakshi from Chopra Foundation and Mr. Panashi. A very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you so much each one of you for your continued support.
The format which we discussed with our esteemed speaker would be like that he would like to walk up and down in the well, so we'll all move down, and I think he'd like to be more interactive session. That's what you do that. You have that. You can handle it. That somebody can be using it for you, or you like to do it yourself. You can. We'll all move down. I have a cordless now. This is better. He's turned it around.
So thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted. This is a beautiful room. Reminds me of the United Nations. It's wonderful to see it filled up. I will talk about the future of well-being, but that's a very big topic. And when you mentioned all the different components, financial, career, community, social, physical, ecological, it would take a long time to cover that, so I'll keep it simpler than that. Just to give you a background, I didn't thank each of you individually, but thank you for inviting me, Ritu, and thank you very much, all the FICCI board and Flow members. A little background, I'm a physician by training. I went to All India Institute of Medical Sciences, got my MBBS from there, and then I went to the US and I trained in internal medicine, and then I took my training in endocrinology. For those of you who are not familiar with that, that's the study of hormones. And then I trained in neuroendocrinology and neuroscience, which is essentially brain chemistry. And I was also teaching in Boston at all the medical schools. And I was also practicing medicine, and still do, but not in Boston anymore. And there were two things that really influenced where I am now. One was that as a physician, I was very aware of the fact that you could, and any physician will tell you, that you can have two patients who have the same disease, who have the same diagnosis, they see the same physician, they get the same treatment, but they can have completely different outcomes. One can die, the other one can recover. Now, of course, a lot of people would say that's because they have different genes, they have different predispositions, and they have different immune responses, which is partly true, but since then we've learned a lot about the behavior of genes as well. So that was one thing that was influencing my thinking. The second thing was the training I took, which was in neuroscience and neuroendocrinology. So when we were doing this, and this a long time ago, in the late 70s, in the early 80s, we were studying in my department as a fellow with other great scientists. We were studying neurochemicals, otherwise known as neuropeptides. Neuro means obviously coming from the brain, and peptides, because the chemicals we were studying were proteins, and peptides is another word for proteins. And it became obvious to us, those of us who were doing this, that these neurochemicals, or these neuropeptides, were literally the molecules of emotion. So when people have any emotion, anger, hostility, guilt, shame, fear, depression, or they fall in love, or feel compassion, or joy, or equanimity, or exhilaration, or ecstasy, it doesn't matter. Every time you have a certain emotional state in your consciousness, it creates its own chemistry. So our biology, in terms of chemicals, is different in different states of consciousness. It's the first principle. That our biology is different in different states of consciousness. One of my colleagues with whom I was training at that time was a young woman by the name of Candice Burt, and she later became the chief of brain chemistry at Georgetown and then the National Institutes of Health in Washington. She actually coined the word molecules of emotion, wrote a book about it, and I was fortunate to write the foreword to that book. It was the first time that anybody had suggested that our body chemistry or brain chemistry is directly linked to our emotions. Nobody had suggested that at that time. We then discovered, and it took a while to discover this, that there were receptors to these molecules in different parts of the body. So when we looked at skin cells and immune cells and stomach cells and even heart cells, if you look at the cell walls of different parts of your body, there are receptors to these molecules. So think of the molecule as a key and the receptor as a keyhole. The molecule is generated in your brain as you are thinking or feeling, and then it generates this molecule. The molecule circulates in your blood, and then it opens a keyhole. It fits into a keyhole, the receptor, in a cell, and then it sends the message. So you're feeling happy, all the cells in your body get the message that you're feeling happy. All the cells, immune cells, heart cells, whatever. You're feeling anxious, all the cells in your body get the same message, whatever you're feeling. It then became more interesting because when we started looking at these cells, the stomach cells and other cells of the body, we found that these cells could make the same molecules that the brain makes. So stomach cells make the same molecules, your heart cells make the same molecules. So, you know, there's an expression in English, sometimes people say, I have a gut feeling about such and such. Well, it turns out that this is not a metaphor, it's a fact of biology. Or when somebody says, my heart is in love, it's not a metaphor, it's a fact of biology. Your heart is different in different states of consciousness. So this was almost a revolution for us, for those of us who were in this field. And of course the first question is, where is the mind? So most people would say the mind is, you know, produced by the brain. Well, we couldn't say that anymore. The mind was in all the cells of the body. I used to joke with my colleagues, in the brain it speaks in English with an Indian accent, but it's actually not in the brain, it's in all the cells of the body. Your body, in fact, is your subconscious mind. Okay, now there are hundreds of these molecules that have been identified. Some of these are very commonly known. Even the general public knows about them. So dopamine is a molecule that's produced when you feel happy. Oxytocin is a hormone that's produced by women when they nurse their baby or during labor or when they bond with the baby. But now we know that oxytocin is produced when people fall in love. Okay, it's also a hormone that's produced when you feel great compassion for anybody. And of course then there are other molecules like opiates, which are also called endorphins, which make you feel intoxicated. They go up when you exercise, but also when you're intoxicated with the emotion, any emotion. So oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, all the antidepressants that people use in pharmaceutical companies these days are called serotonin uptake inhibitors because they increase serotonin in your body. Okay, so that was the first breakthrough in what came to be known as mind-body medicine. There was no such discipline at that time till we actually pioneered this whole movement. The second big breakthrough, I think, was the realization that our bodies are not static. It should be obvious. You don't have the same body you have today as you had when you were a teenager or when you were a baby. But the body is very dynamic in every moment of our existence. So on the physical level, your body is not the same right this moment as it was before you came into this room. Why? Because we're breathing, we are experiencing the world through our five senses, we are thinking, we are just metabolizing the food we ate, and we eliminate the byproducts of our metabolism, which keeps the body very dynamic. It's not something that stands still for even a second. And you can do studies, you can do scientific studies to show that in 1 year or so you replace almost 98% of all the molecules of your body. So right now I'm using my year 2014 model to give you this lecture, and the last time I came to New Delhi I brought the same suitcase but not the same body. Okay, because my suitcase has a longer shelf life than my physical body. The physical body is recycling very fast. And in fact, you can measure the recycling in different parts of the body. So your stomach cells recycle every 5 days. The stomach cells that you have today aren't the ones you had 6 days ago. Your skin cells recycle once a month. Your skeleton, it seems so hard and solid, you know, skeleton is almost like this, but in a living body, the calcium and the phosphorus and all the elements that go to make a living skeleton, they recycle every 3 months. You don't have the same skeleton today that you had 3 months ago. And in 1 year, you've replaced almost your entire body. 1 year you replace, and still the body grows old, it ages, it dies, and so something very strange is happening. While the body is recycling, it's also getting old, it's aging, and it gets disease, it gets infirmity, and it ultimately dies. So what's going on was the basic fundamental question. What's going on? If the body is recycling, what is recycling? And I think if you think about this a little bit, you'll realize that what is recycling is memory. Okay, what the stomach cells recycle every 5 days, but what recycles in the stomach is the memory of how to digest food. The skin cells die every month, new ones come. If they didn't, your skin would be like leather or like an alligator. But skin cells are recycling once a month, and yet your skin doesn't forget the difference between hot and cold, or pain and pleasure, etc. Your DNA is the alphabet of life. Your genes, which are made up of DNA, and genes are the units of inheritance. So you came to this world with about 23,000 genes, and those make up your body. But these genes, the actual components of the gene, which means the carbon, the hydrogen, the oxygen, the nitrogen, everything that makes up the gene, it recycles every 6 days. 6 weeks. So what's recycling is memory, in a sense. You might say memories reincarnate as the body. Not after you die, right now. Okay, so your body is the constant reincarnation of memory. What is memory but past experience? If you want to use Hindi words, it's the karma. So karma, past experience, which creates memory, which in Sanskrit is called sanskara, which creates the impulse for or intention for desire, is what's recycled.